Good afternoon. Thank you all very much for coming today. My name is Barbara McQuaid. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. And we're here today because we want to let the public know what we're doing about violent crime and homicide in Detroit. In recent days, we have seen some just horrific crimes occurring in our community. And we really wanted to come out and just assure the public about all of the things that we're doing to protect public safety. And I hope that we might also have some impact in deterring some of the criminals who are committing these heinous crimes. You know, I think from a national media perspective, if you weren't someone who lives in Detroit, you might have the wrong impression that we're all running around shooting each other. But the fact is, we're a city of more than 700,000 people, and the people responsible for these heinous crimes is a very small percentage of those people who are victimizing the other 99% of good people who just want to go about their business and live in safety. And so we are focusing on that small percentage. We are working to identify those people, to prosecute them aggressively, and remove them from the community so the rest of us can live without fear. We have a three-prong approach to what we're doing: prevention, enforcement, and community trust. And I'll speak about each of those things. But first I want to introduce the partners who I am with today, and I'm very proud to work with. Andy Arena, the Special Agent in charge of the FBI, Chief Ralph Godby of the Detroit Police Department, Bill Temple, who is the Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Bob Corso, who is the Special Agent in charge of DEA, Lieutenant Darrell Hill from the Michigan State Police Department, Under Sheriff Daniel Faunus from Wayne County Sheriff's Department, Mike Alexander from the Michigan Department of Corrections, and John Broad from Crime Stoppers. So as I said, we have a three-part approach: enforcement, prevention, and community trust. I believe that all three of those components are essential to success in law enforcement. First, in enforcement, you know, even before these recent crimes, which are very sensational and horrific, when you have everything from a young baby to an 86-year-old man being victimized, we've had a serious crime problem in Detroit. Last year, we had 344 homicides, intolerably high. It is not acceptable, and we're working hard to address it. But since the beginning of the year, I made it my personal New Year's resolution to reduce homicides in Detroit. I can't do it alone. I need the partnership of all of these people. But I tell you that today because they say you should tell people your goal if you want to be held accountable and you want to be successful in reaching it. So there it is. It is my personal goal to reduce homicides in the city of Detroit in 2012. And we are tackling it together. We've been working on plans all year, and I want to tell you about them. Andy Arena is going to talk about what is happening with the Violent Crimes Task Force on the east side of Detroit. We're going to hear from Bill Temple with ATF to talk about what's happening on the west side of Detroit. And we've got very good, comprehensive plans in all of those areas. But in particular, on the east side, you know, Chief Godby is dedicated to utilizing best practices, data analysis, and other things to deploy his resources most effectively. And one of the things he detected is in 2011, the homicide rate actually went down in all parts of the city of Detroit except for one, the Eastern District, where it went up by 75%. So, you know, even I can figure out that's the place where you need to deploy your resources. And so we have a very good plan in place to utilize the resources of all of these organizations to go after violent crimes and shootings in the Eastern District. And I can tell you that at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're very committed to this. We started last year incrementally with something we called Project 48205, which was to look just in that zip code, which was reported as the most deadly in Detroit, to see if we looked at every gun case there, what impact could we have? And we learned some important things. For example, there's a high number of youthful offenders who live in that area. There's a high number of parolees and probationers who live in that area. So utilizing the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for the juvenile offenders and the Michigan Department of Corrections for the probation and parolees can be a very useful strategy, and we are deploying that strategy over there. The U.S. Attorney's Office has committed to embedding prosecutors in the co-located space with the Violent Crimes Task Force, and Kevin Mulcahy and John O'Brien are with me here today. Our prosecutors are going to be embedded there so that we can prosecute illegal firearms cases arising out of that district. In the federal system, the average sentence for a firearms violation is 7 years. There is no parole in the federal system, and offenders serve their time far away in places like Oklahoma. And so I want to send a message to offenders that if you use a gun to commit a crime in the city of Detroit, you will do serious federal time. I am hopeful that we can have some kind of deterrent effect by being very aggressive in our enforcement efforts. As I said, in addition to enforcement efforts, prevention is also a very important component of what we're doing. You know, it costs $28,000 a year to incarcerate one prisoner. Isn't that money much better spent on prevention efforts? You also have, of course, victims of crimes after we arrest and prosecute somebody. So we think prevention efforts is time well spent, and we are focusing on prevention efforts. Stephanie Davis is with us today. She has been leading our efforts along with the City of Detroit for a youth violence prevention initiative, and it has already seen success in the year or so since we've been working on it. We have more work to do, but this is the kind of thing that can bring long-term solutions. You know, we can arrest and prosecute today, but if we want to change the culture of violence, we need to do some work to do that. And so the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative has 4 components so far. One is Safe Routes to School, which has already seen results with volunteer patrols protecting kids. We've reduced the number of incidents of kids being attacked on their way to school. Safe Passage, which is an alternative to expulsion. And again, we've seen success with that, with fewer kids being thrown out of school. Ceasefire, which Chief Godby will talk about a bit more, which is intervening with some of these dangerous people who are committing the crimes. And then a summer strategy to find jobs and other recreational opportunities for youth so that we give them something productive to do instead of leaving them idly on street corners to commit crimes. And finally, the third component of our strategy is community trust. We know that we live in a culture of no snitch mentality, but we need our citizens to stand with us. We need citizens to report when they are the victims of a crime. We need citizens to report when they are witnesses to crime. When they know who shot up a house, we need them to come forward. But we know that that community trust needs to be earned. And that's why all of us spend so much time out in the community meeting people, because we believe that the citizens are fed up too, that they don't want to stand for this kind of crime anymore, and that they will partner with us. And so we ask for that partnership to stand with us so that we can work together to improve public safety. With that, I'll turn it over to Andy Arena from the FBI.
Would you say your last name, Mr. Arena, please?
Sure, certainly. A-R-E-N-A. So Joe Louis Arena. Barb, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here with all of my friends and my colleagues in the law enforcement community to talk about the comprehensive plan that we have initiated to target violent crime and to drive it down in the city of Detroit. We're not going to do it alone. The only way we're going to do it is together. And what I want to talk about primarily today is the Eastern District of Detroit. And I'm up here really not speaking as the FBI. I'm speaking as a member of the Violent Crime Task Force. The Violent Crime Task Force has been around for a long, long time. It is a rich and storied history in fighting crime in the city of Detroit. And we have now taken that task force and focused all of its resources on one area of the city to basically alleviate this problem. We care and feed and nurture the task force, but the ownership is by all of us up here, here before you today. What we are doing is Barb said, is certainly a data-driven, intelligence-driven method. We are looking at what are the most violent sections of that district, and basically going in and find out who are the people committing the crime in that district. We do not want to be, nor do we have the resources to be an occupying army. That's not our job. Our job is to go in there and remove the cancerous tumor without damaging that community, and that is certainly our goal. We're going to look at long-term, short-term, and medium-term investigations. And the key to that, as Barb said, is the co-location of the prosecutors. For the first time in the history of the Violent Crime Task Force, they have their own home now. They're all co-located in one location. All the men and women of these agencies are sitting together and working out of one location. It certainly builds a real team concept. But we also, for the first time, have prosecutors from the United States Attorney's Office and from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office co-located with those agents and task force officers. So that is something very new, and I think that team concept will certainly roll over into prosecution. So what are we looking for? As Barb said, we are looking for, we don't care if it's a local prosecution or a federal prosecution, but get these people off the street. We want to identify who the bad people are, get them off the streets as quickly as possible. The end game still being, if all possible, to take these people in criminal enterprise types of investigations through the federal system. Instead of getting 6 months in Wayne County Jail, you are looking at 20, 30, 40-year federal minimum sentences. What we have found is when we charge these people with 30 to 40-year sentences, federal sentences, they talk. And they will tell us who the shooters are, and they will tell us who are killing people in the Eastern District of Detroit. So that is our goal. That is what we're going to be doing. We've started, actually, the first segment of this started on Valentine's Day, of all days, with a warrant sweep. We were able to pick up 8 violent felons. We identified a couple who were actually deceased and dismissed those warrants, and we identified that 15 others had fled the state of Michigan, and we are now looking for them throughout the United States. That's just the first stage. We picked those people up, that's really good, but the key to that thing was intelligence. People talked to us. When we went to the doors and knocked on the doors, people talked to us, and they told us what was going on in the neighborhood. So maybe that mentality of Barb mentioned about the no snitch, maybe we're getting over that, I don't know. But people are talking to us. Everything we do, the key to it is intelligence. We need to find out who the bad people are, where they're at, what they're doing, and come up with a plan to take them off the street. So that is our goal over the next year. As I said, the key to it is obviously the embedding of these people, but the key is a commitment. I have a commitment from, well, you have a commitment from the FBI. We have put 8 additional FBI agents on the Violent Crime Task Force in the Eastern District of Detroit. Chief Godby has committed 4 additional Detroit police officers to that task force. The United States Secret Service has committed an agent to that task force. The Michigan State Police has committed additional resources to the task force. So we are going to put as many people in the Eastern District to implement this plan as we can.
Thank you, Andy. This community is very fortunate to have a leader like Andy Arena at the FBI who understands the needs of this community to focus on violent crime, and I feel very fortunate to have him as a partner. And another person that this community is very fortunate to have is our next speaker, Police Chief Ralph Godby from the Detroit Police Department, a very innovative thinker and an incredibly dedicated public servant. Chief Godby.
First of all, I want to thank the U.S. Attorney for her foresight to call this gathering. Because a lot of times, as we talk about violent crime in Detroit, the conversation devolves to a DPD, what is the Detroit Police Department doing, as if there's not a coordinated strategy, and as if that we are not working with several partners in this room. The focus on dismantling serious criminal enterprises with short-term, medium-term, and long-term prosecutions, they have a strategic effect that will help us years from now. Systematically, we did not get in the situation we are in the city of Detroit overnight. So the strategy that is being put together with these wonderful partners is really working towards not only a secure Detroit now, but a secure Detroit for years to come by dismantling these major criminal enterprises. One approach of the 3 approaches that the U.S. Attorney has spoken about deals with an intervention process, and you may have heard the term ceasefire. Within the construct of the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative, we are engaged in the ceasefire process. There are 2 iterations of ceasefire, and the one that we've chosen for the city of Detroit that we think will have the most benefit is the call-in model. And what the call-in model calls for us to do is to identify the worst of the worst, to bring them in with the leverage of our partner, Mike Alexander, Department of Corrections, and to bring those folks in to leverage the probation or parole status, to identify them, to look them in the face, to let them know what the consequences of continued bad behavior are, and how those consequences cascade to their fellow cohorts in crime. But there's also a component that offers, if they want a way out of that life, some social service supports to go with it also. And if you do that in a strategic way in demonstrated areas, the city of Boston was the model that we looked at in working under and with the Department of Justice to formulate this strategy. And through the Youth Violence Prevention Steering Committee, we are at a point of execution of this strategy to support the work that is being done under the violent crime reduction strategy that is very heavily invested in VC, the Violent Crime Task Force, but also in the Comprehensive Violence Reduction Partnership, which is a construct that has been brought forward by U.S. Attorney Barb McQuaid. So for us, this is an opportunity to talk and reintroduce to this community the tremendous amount of resources and resolve we have to dismantling major criminal enterprises. We are not in the least bit deterred. Are we disturbed by young people that are being affected? Absolutely. Will we bring those crimes to closure? We absolutely will. But to give you an appreciation for what these relationships bring forward, the significant investigative progress that we made relative to Delroy Miller's homicide is part and parcel the intelligence gathering that these groups have already had on the ground and the relationships that we share. We do need involvement from the community to help us, to give us that piece of information, but absent that piece of information that the community gives us, with what we are doing, I'm very confident that case will come to closure. So again, I want to applaud U.S. Attorney for her leadership, and again, remind everybody of the tremendous resources that we have to bear to bring relatives to this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I applaud Chief Godby as well for looking around the country at innovative practices and bringing them home to Detroit. You know, with the budget issues that we face in our state, you can't always do more, but you got to do different, and Chief Godby is doing just that. I see that Susan Galuli has entered the room. She's an assistant U.S. attorney in our office who has headed up our 48205 project, and just today was in court handling a case arising out of that project where someone possessed a machine gun and will be charged federally, has been charged federally. She will prosecute that case, but I think an example of someone who is dangerous in our community, who has been removed from the community thanks to the collective efforts of this group. Next, we're going to hear from ATF, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Bill Temple, about the role they're playing not only in the BCTF, but also on the west side of town, where our Comprehensive Violence Reduction Partnership has been very successful with efforts over there led by ATF.
Thanks, Mark. It's an honor to stand here with all our partnerships with federal, state, and local agencies. As the U.S. Attorney stated, the successes we've had on the west side of the city, we've joined together to reduce the violent crime out there by 10% and homicides by 27%. As Mr. Arena stated, it takes everybody pulling together, intelligence-led policing, getting that facts out there, having the community to be involved, taking ownership of your community, and working together to bring these criminals to justice. Our focus in ATF is to get the trigger pullers, the people who are doing the shooting. And one of the things that we can help with is the intelligence that's based around firearms trafficking and firearms crimes, violent crimes especially. And one of the things we want to announce today is the fact that we're joining with Crime Stoppers in adding $5,000 to the reward for the murder of the 9-month-old Delroy Miller. That's a heinous crime. An innocent person has been killed, and there's no reason why it should happen in our city. So, together with our state and local partners, we're going to work together to get these bad apples off the street by taking the guns out of the hands of those criminals. I appreciate the opportunity to come up here and address everybody, and I look forward to the successes that we'll have in the Eastern District. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill. We appreciate everything that ATF is doing. We also appreciate everything that DEA is doing, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and we have Special Agent in Charge Bob Corso. So many of the homicides in our city are related to major drug trafficking organizations, and we're very proud to partner with Bob Corso and DEA to address those crimes.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Mark.
Spell your last name, sir, please.
I'm sorry, C-O-R-S-O. DEA is, unlike the other agencies up here, the only single mission agency in the federal government. All we do is work drugs. However, we're also not immune to the fact that a lot of drug dealers, both street dealers and the big fish, so to speak, that we target, are also involved in other crimes, along with a lot of weapons and a lot of violence that surrounds the business. We don't have the authority, actually, to work those type of crimes, but the people up here do. And for your knowledge, because I don't think it's very well known, we force multiply in task forces in the city of Detroit and throughout the United States, really, for DEA, by joining forces with and bringing the agencies together that have the abilities to enforce the specific crimes that we're all involved with. For example, in the city of Detroit, the Violent Crime Task Force, we partner with the Detroit PD and the Red Rum Task Force. We work with MSP in the same way. So there are things that we can't do legally, well, I want to say can't do legally, that that we don't investigate. However, we partner with the authorities that do, and therefore we can bring it all together, and at the end of the day, DEA will prosecute the drug dealers, ATF will prosecute the firearms issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, this is not a new concept. For those of you that don't know, I mean, we've been doing this for years, and we are going to continue to do that, realizing that, you know, in today's day and age with the resource cuts and everything else, the task force mentality, what you see here, and I think Andy said, we are friends up here. This is not a bunch of talking heads up here. We mean this. This is my hometown. I was born and raised in this city. I've got 37 years in law enforcement, and like Barb said, it's a personal vendetta of mine, a personal mission to bring the city back. So again, thank you, Barb, and thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I think the collaboration we have in Detroit is unique in cities. I hear from colleagues around the country about turf battles and things, but as you can see, this group collaborates. It's necessary here, and I think that as a result, we are stronger and more effective. Next, we're going to hear from Lieutenant Darrell Hill from the Michigan State Police.
Thanks, Barb. I'm Inspector Darrell Hill from the Michigan State Police, one of the
Your first name, at least.
Darryl. I'm one of the assistant district commanders here assigned to southeastern Michigan. First of all, I want to say that we anticipate additional dialogue with all of these law enforcement leaders present up here today regarding what we can do to help with this problem and what additional resources MSP can provide to assist. The Michigan State Police would like to reaffirm our commitment to partnering with the ATF, the FBI, on their violent crime initiatives within the city of Detroit. We currently have multiple detectives assigned to various task forces within the city, and we look forward to continuing to work with the Detroit Police Department to solve violent crime issues in the city. I'm going to be real brief with that because, like I said, additional dialogue will be had regarding how MSP can further assist.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Colonel. But Michigan State Police, though, is an important part of supplementing the bodies that we have available to us to attack this problem. So we are very appreciative of the resources we get from Michigan State Police. Up next, we're going to hear from Under Sheriff Daniel Faunus of the Wayne County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, and I'll just capitalize on some of the things that my partners heard said. The Wayne County Sheriff's Office is proud to be part of this collaborative effort of law enforcement entities. In particular, we're proud of our membership in the Violent Crime Task Force. We hope that our membership there serves as a force multiplier to have an impact on the violent crime that is plaguing the streets of the city of Detroit. And we continue to be involved in these collaborative efforts, and we'll continue to do so in the future to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. As we said, a key partner in all of this is the Michigan Department of Corrections. Especially on the east side, we have a very high number of people who have returned to the community from prison, who are on probation or parole. And Mike Alexander from the Michigan Department of Corrections is going to talk about his role in all of this.
Good afternoon. Anybody want a first or last name spelling? Department of Corrections is committed in its collaboration with working with all the law enforcement partners up here, whether it's Ceasefire, whether it's the Violent Crimes Task Force, whether it's Northeast and Northwest operatives going on. We have approximately 600 agents dedicated to working in supervising approximately 35,000 offenders, parolees, and probationers in the metropolitan area, which consists of Oakland, Washtenaw, Wayne County, and Macomb. As part of that, what Andy Arena said originally, the most important thing is intelligence gathering, and where the Department of Corrections comes in its collaboration with all the law enforcement partners up here is that we can provide a tremendous amount of intelligence to all the law enforcement partners and vice versa. The intelligence they provide to us allows us to identify parolees and probationers who are on the street who need to be removed from the street for violations of parole or probation. And to that end, we are highly committed. But also, as the U.S. Attorney said, the Department of Corrections has a two-pronged approach, and not only is involved in enforcement with the collaborative agencies up here, it's also involved in prisoner reentry, which is trying to provide tools and equipment for returning parolees and probationers to the community. Not all parolees and probationers are considered criminals where they're committing violent crimes, and what we try to do is offer an opportunity for those people returning to society to provide a seamless transition, whether it be training, education, or some transitional housing or some other form of assistance. And to that end, I want to thank all the partners up here for all the cooperation and continued cooperation and collaboration we have in this endeavor.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate all that you're doing with MDOC. New crime and is helping us empower citizens to become part of the solution. So, John Broad.
Thank you, Barbara, for your leadership in putting this together. This is, I think, a most important meeting. I'm going to address my remarks to the criminals and to the would-be criminals. Basically, don't be stupid. What's being announced at this press conference is that in addition to all of the local and state law enforcement agencies, the feds are coming for you. They're going to find any way that they can to look at what you're doing or thinking about doing to construe this as a federal crime, and they're going to win. If you live by the sword, then you die by the sword. As president of Crime Stoppers, I want to reach out to the criminals in our city. Once you get caught up in crime, it's not just your life that's in danger. You are risking the lives of your mother, your sister, your little brother, and your friends. They are the next ones you will see on television, the next ones to have been killed in a senseless murder. I can name victim after victim, someone's nephew, someone's sister, someone's aunt, little babies that have barely have had a life, all innocent. But someone often in their family was a criminal. Do you really want to put these people at risk? Think about it before you do something stupid. I also want to tell you how Crime Stoppers works. We are not part of any police department. When you commit a crime, the police may not know that you committed a crime, but someone else will. You can count on it. Someone may notice that you are acting different, acting suspicious. Someone may notice that you seem to have more money, a better car than you had before, better clothes, or driving a better car. Someone may have caught a glimpse of you or overheard you talking. 6,000 people in the Detroit area gave Crime Stoppers tips last year. That was 2,000 more tips than the previous year. 2,000 more people called in. That's an awful lot of eyes and ears. People are fed up. They want to tell Crime Stoppers what they know. There is a reward up to $2,500 for information that leads to an arrest. That's a lot of money. But as much as it is, most people don't give the information for the reward. They just want you to pay for your crime. Crime Stoppers is anonymous. It is just a whole lot of people looking for clues of crimes and looking for you. Think long and hard before you commit a crime. Do you think you can hide your crime from everyone forever? Can you live with the knowledge that your actions brought violence and grief to your family and your friends? It doesn't have to be that way, but here's the thing. It's your choice. Crime Stoppers will be here no matter what.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your partnership. Let me just sum up then by saying that every time I hear about one of these stories, another homicide, a child has been killed, it absolutely breaks my heart. It hurts to read it. But we together will not allow Detroit to be defined by violence and homicide. This city has a lot of great chapters of history yet to be written, and we are working hard to make sure that that unwritten history is a positive story. Thank you. With that, we'll take your questions.
Ms. McQuay, can you talk a little bit more about, this is pretty intriguing and it sounds very different, about the possibility of a criminal with a weapon getting 7 years a federal time? Does it have to be a particular type of firearm? What has to be, and are you all breaking new ground with this?
It is that is the average sentence in one of our cases, so the actual sentence will vary depending on the person's criminal history and the kind of weapon he or she possesses. But, you know, our bread and butter is a case called felon in possession of a firearm. If you are a felon and you possess a firearm, we have the ability to prosecute you federally. And we have now expanded the number of cases we're going to take arising out of the Eastern District. And I believe that for every illegal firearm we take off the streets, that is a potential homicide that is not going to occur. So we're going to take more of those cases. The sentences will vary depending on the criminal history and the kind of gun possessed. But for example, the machine gun that we found today, you know, that person likely faces a very significant sentence, and they will do long, serious, hard time. And I want defendants to know that. If they use a gun in Detroit, they're going to face serious prison time.
So you always had that ability, but now you are ramping it up.
We are. You know, when you look at priorities, whenever you do something, that means there's something else you can't do. So we have taken some gun cases. We certainly work with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, who also handles cases. But we have the ability to get stiffer sentences in the federal system. So we're going to increase the number of cases that we're taking as part of this program in the Eastern District.
How is this different from what you announced last year, where you were targeting a similar program in the Eastern? I mean, how is this different?
We were focusing a smaller area for just the 48205 zip code area is kind of a pilot project because we just kind of wanted to see what kind of cases arise in that area, what kind of volume would we get. And we're expanding that to a wider geographic footprint to the entire Eastern District. That includes the 5th Precinct and the 9th Precinct, the entire east side of Detroit.
What about, well, to go back to the guns and the federal charges, what about if they're children? You have 2 cases where children are using AK-47s to commit crimes, or a shotgun. What are you going to do with the children who are doing adult crimes or using adult guns to prevent them or to punish them for what they've done?
It's a great point, and one of the things we found from our pilot program in 48205 is how many offenders in the Eastern District are juveniles. It's an area where there is a significant juvenile population and also a significant number of juvenile offenders. We don't prosecute them in the federal system. We're not equipped to do it. But the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office and its Juvenile Division is focusing on those cases and will address those cases, and some of those children will be prosecuted as adults.
Were you considering curfews?
That's not something I can discuss, but Chief Godby perhaps can.
I mean, it's nothing to consider relative to curfews. There is curfew ordinance on the book and is vigorously enforced. But what we are looking at is having the time, the threshold brought down. The city of Chicago, which experienced an increase in youth crime, I think last year, had significant homicide problems dealing with youth. They lowered the threshold relative to time. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at an alternative to our current loitering ordinance where the business owner is the complainant on the loitering so that the officer can be the complaining witness on the loitering, which has much more strength and teeth. So those are 2 ordinance proposals that will be coming forward in the near future.
Chief, do you feel a little overwhelmed about what's been happening the past month? I mean, with the kids and even the crimes that haven't been solved, with even the 4 women in the trunks, like, do you feel a little overwhelmed with what's been happening over the past 1 or 2 months?
I don't have a luxury to feel overwhelmed, number one. I'm responsible for providing leadership to 3,000 of the greatest employees that I've ever worked with in my life in the Detroit Police Department. And then when I have this kind of support and friendship and collaboration, we're not overwhelmed in the least. Overwhelmed emotionally because you hate to see a child lose their life. But as far as our capacity to police and enforce in this community, not overwhelmed in the least.
Can you give us some of the rough, if you can, boundaries of this hot zip?
Well, it's not a zip code. As the U.S. Attorney has expressed,
48205
was the initial pilot, but expanding now to the 5th Precinct and the 9th Precinct border. That encompasses the Eastern District. From a data standpoint, that's what we found. There was a significant increase in homicides last year. And as it's been referenced to some of the drivers selling pills, the Oxycontin trade, I mean, a number of things are contributing to that. So dismantling those criminal entities along with short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies is the focus for that area.
Chief Gabby, for everyone in Detroit, the first step is not to call the FBI or the attorney's office. But
911.
It's 911. But
So that's why I'm charged as the first responder.
Mhm.
And I don't mind being held accountable. I mean, that's what they give me these stars for. And that's what the mayor requires of me. But what the mayor has empowered us to do is to work collaboratively here I'm telling you, this is unprecedented. I've been with the Detroit Police Department 25 years, and this amount of cooperation, such few egos in the room where nobody cares about who gets credit for what, and single mission focus on reducing violent crime, I am very proud to be a part of this group. So from that standpoint, I think we're going to make very significant progress because we're laser focused, we understand the scope of the problem, we have a very cogent strategy, and we have the resources to bring it to bear.
But is DPD doing anything to change its image among Detroiters who don't have faith in the system, like slow response times, precincts closing early? I mean, is the department doing anything?
First of all, your characterization is completely wrong. Precincts don't close.
Okay.
Precincts are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. My charge as chief of police is to make sure that every sworn police officer that has a badge, a gun, and an ID gets from behind the desk and get out into active policing. That's what I've done, and I'm very proud of that. And the media continues to say precincts are closed. Please do not repeat that again.
This question is for the Department of Correction. Considering what you've said today about, getting people off the street, what do you think about, what recently came out about Joshua Brown, the fact that he was supposed to be on a tether, was never activated, he was out on the streets, and he should not have been?
Right, and I would like to comment on that, but I can't because we are continuing an investigation of that, and it should be wrapped up within the next week.
So can you maybe answer this? What do you say to people who have heard that, what you just said, and also have read the article, and are concerned that maybe what they're hearing is not necessarily the real deal, that this is just to make them feel better, but that nothing's actually happening?
Are you talking about the article not being the real deal?
No, I'm just saying in
Because
regards
that's what I would
to...
say, that there was a lot of inconsistencies in the article. And, I'm not interested in trying the case in the court of public opinion when there are some things mentioned. For example, in the article, it talks about the tether being on day and night with the idea that we could trace the person's footsteps. Well, that's not the type of tether the person is required to be in. So, based on that and some other things, I would rather not comment on that because I think it was misleading to a great degree. But I would say that the Department of Corrections is committed. We have a GPS monitoring system. We have a zero gun tolerance. Like the U.S. Attorney said, that any parolee or probationer who is involved with a weapon or imitation of a weapon or associating with somebody a weapon has a zero tolerance for that type of behavior. So we move very quickly to take people off the street for those types of things.
Barb, can Susan ask some questions about 48205 just to find out how many people since last September have been arrested under the program?
Susan, are you still in the room? I don't know if you have those numbers at your fingertips. I guess the question is how many people have been charged federally in 48205. I don't know the answer, if you have the answer to that. One of the things we found is a number of juvenile offenders that we are not equipped to charge in the federal system, who charged in the state system. But do you know the numbers charged federally or charged totally?
I'd say between 10 and 13 indictments have been filed charging those individuals in that area with federal offenses.
Okay. But then certainly many others have then gone through the state system, being the juvenile offenders.
And what can you tell us about the machine gun incident that was in court today?
So Susan, because it's a pending case, of course, we need to be careful, but the charges in the public document state?
Yes, it is.
Excuse me, can you? Yeah, sorry, that's a good idea. This is Susan Gillooly, Gillooly, Assistant U.S. Attorney, coordinates our gun prosecutions in the U.S. Attorney's Office, does a tremendous job. The case is U.S. v. Roberson.
It is.
And just the publicly disclosed allegations you can share.
We have a
And spell that last name again, Susan.
Gillooly. First name Susan. We have filed an indictment in this matter, which we were in court yesterday and today on charging him with possession of a machine gun, which also had a hand grenade launcher attached on top of it. It was found as a result of a call to a domestic violence incident by the Detroit Police Department, and it is in the 48205 Police District area. We have detained that individual, and he will be held in marshal's custody until such time as further proceedings are held.
What did he do?
He had a machine gun.
What did he
It's
do?
illegal
What did he do?
possess it.
Is it in the
To
indictment?
possess it
Is that all it
illegal.
is? He's just possessing it? Has he been charged with executing it, using it?
No, he has not. He's just been charged with possessing it at this point and not registering it with the proper legal
Okay.
authorities. But it was found as a result of a call involving a domestic violence incident.
How old is he? How old is he? And what can you say about this person?
26, 27 approximately.
I guess the question now goes to the ATF. How does a person get a hold of a gun with a grenade launcher on top of it? And then back to the children, how does a 15-year-old get a hold of an AK-47? How do you prevent these guns, these destructive weapons to come in here like this and get in the hands of people who don't need to have them?
Majority of the guns that are found in the street are bought off the street. They usually come from either burglaries, home invasions, people who sell guns that don't care who they're selling them to. I'm sure once we get the information back on the gun that the two juveniles had, it was probably a relative or somebody that they knew got it from a different source and sold it to them.
How does anyone get a gun of that caliber?
AK-47?
Grenade launcher, well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a black market out there where, you know, they can be stolen, they can be made. You know, we have people that make this stuff out on the black market. We have, investigations where people make machine guns out of parts.
Can those guns be purchased at gun shows? Those kind of guns?
Not machine guns. Machine guns take a totally different type of license to sell them and to purchase them.
Are there any efforts to kind of crack down on that black market?
Every day.
How long have these initiatives been going when you look at the effort in the Eastern District and then also the violent crime task force? How long have you been working on this?
Well, as Andy Arena said, the Violent Crime Task Force has existed for a long time, but
Right.
this current strategy is just being implemented now. It's something that we've been talking about since the first of the year, and we're just now co-locating them, so it's just underway. On the west side, those efforts have been underway for about 2 years, and we are now seeing the fruits of that work, I think.
That was a
in light of
20%
the
drop.
reduction, 10% reduction in violent crime, 24% reduction in homicide. So we are hopeful that those efforts in the Eastern District will have similar successful
So
results.
people in Detroit will now start to really see the impact of some of the things that you've just started.
That's our hope.
Is it basically that there are going to be more federal agents on the east side? I mean, is that what this is? The east side is now, we're warning you, the feds are moving into the east side.
Well, I don't want to say it's just the east side, because we've got efforts across the city. But in light of that statistic that said 75% increase in homicides in the Eastern District, we need to be nimble with our resources. And so we are going to focus on that area in an effort to get that number down.
And how are we paying for this? We know MSP, we've got our cutbacks, and extra agents, extra time. Are you all getting any federal funds, or can you?
Zero. We have zero increase in funding. We are just trying. One of the big challenges all of us have as leaders in law enforcement is figuring out the best way to use our resources. We get what we get, and we decide how to use them. So we've gotten together to talk about what's the best way we can bolster our resources by working together, and this is what we have come up with.
And Barbara, a chief part of this effort, right, is increasing the amount of federal sentences and harshening those federal sentences, correct?
Well, we can't change what the sentences are because those are imposed by statute and by sentencing guidelines. But there is just an inherent difference between the penalties under the state of Michigan law and under the federal law. And the federal law happens to have stiffer penalties. And a key difference also in the federal system is, unlike the state system, the federal system has no parole. So if someone's sentenced to 7 years, they do 7 years. So by prosecuting people in the federal system, we can get them longer prison sentences, and I hope we can deter some people from using guns and committing them crimes.
Is there evidence that stiffer sentences will deter crime?
There is evidence that it will deter crime, but I also think we remove dangerous people from the community for longer. They can't do harm to victims.
But is there a relationship between dispensing more federal charges and sentences and reduced crime?
Yes, if we can get dangerous people off the streets, they are no longer able to pull the trigger.
Based on?
They're in jail. They're not there. They're gone.
And then statistically, you have to understand, once somebody commits one homicide, criminologists have shown it's easier for them to commit the second, the third, the fourth. It becomes a pathology. So when you get that killer off the street, they cannot repeat. A lot of these people, it's not the first time they've committed a homicide. It's not the first time they've shot somebody, or they've been a victim of a shooting because they've been in a shootout. So definitively, yes, it does reduce.
Chief Godby, if you could answer this question, I mean, the people of the city of Detroit are going to see this, and you are the person, all these other faces really don't mean much to them. You're the person.
I don't know if they
No offense, but you are the person on the front line and the one they look to. A lot of these high-profile crimes in recent weeks have not been solved. And this effort sounds terrific, and it sounds like it's going to work, but for those crimes that haven't been solved and the concerns out there in the community, there haven't been arrests.
Now, when you say they haven't been solved, let's start to go backwards. 6-year-old, 2 15-year-olds in custody, and an AK-47, solved by the Detroit Police Department, specifically a uniform marked scout car. If you travel back to Delrick Miller, we are almost there. There's a significant piece missing from the community, which we need their input, but as a result of these relationships, I believe it's eminently closable. If you're referring to the Trump case, we've done our work. We're waiting for the toxicology reports, and once a cause of death has been determined, I think you will find that that one will come to closure very quickly. Ari Berry, the 3-year-old that was killed last year, we closed that case. So I take a little bit of exception to all these open cases.
The missing little girl.
We've cleared that case. And we don't talk about this much, but by FBI UCR standards, a clearance is when we have exhausted all of our investigative resources and leads, and we know who did it. Closure comes when there's a warrant signed and that person is under arrest. We have submitted a warrant request to the Wayne County prosecutor. It is a very, and you're referring to Bianca Jones, it is a very complex case. We are very sure we know who did it. We have submitted our investigative work. We are working very closely with the prosecutor because it's a very complicated case to try. But at the appropriate time, the prosecutor has indicated to Maria Miller, when a charging decision comes about, she will have a press conference relative to that. So I don't want to minimize the extremely tough work that my men and women do on a daily basis. For a major city, our closure rate is 50%. Now, we can play the game and go to clearance, and we will be closer to 55, maybe even 60%. And we went to clearance based on what we know relative to some of these cases, but I would prefer to err on the side of caution and use closure as our key metric.
You know, one other thing, the process that we're undertaking right now, obviously, is to get people off the street, is to stop this in the future, but it's also to go back and solve crime that is unsolved. Deputy Chief Wells is there. He can back me up on this. Maybe he can give you the numbers, Paul. But you know, about 1.5 years ago, we took down a crew in the Eastside Mayfield boys. We got these guys, and all of a sudden, we're looking at 20, 30, 40-year federal minimum sentences. We cleared, what was it, 12 homicides?
Sure, 9.
9? Yeah. 9 homicides were cleared because these guys started throwing up on themselves. When they saw how much they were going to face federally, we will go back and clear a number of cases just through these investigations.